The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors, advertisers, or presenters. Advertising does not imply endorsement by the sponsors and presenters.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Lighting Controls Podcast. We have a fantastic guest for you today, an absolute Wonder Woman of the industry who has been on the show before. But before we jump into the conversation, let me remind everyone, today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association, and also Light Fair. May is just a short ways away, so make sure you get your tickets and we will see you guys there.
This podcast is also financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. Got a lot of information, but specifically on the NAILD LSC certification, Lighting Specialist in Controls. If you want to learn more about lighting controls, if you're new to the industry, it might be worth checking it out and attending. But there will be more information in a link down below or on our website. Also, huge shout out to our sponsor for this episode. We could not do this without your support. MaxLight's CMax platform. They're a revolutionary lighting controls platform prepared for helping upgrade or new work in a variety of applications, indoor or outdoor. They have this awesome USB-C plug and play capability for their devices, so you can buy fixtures up front and then add controls later on, or change them out if you want to do a different control component. They're really great. We have a great episode earlier on the series talking to Umesh from CMax, and it's really worth checking it out. So go to maxlight.com/CMax to learn more about their platform. But until then, let's get to the conversation. So Lyn, you've been on the show before, but for people who have not heard your episode, do you mind just giving us a quick breakdown on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name's Lyn Gomes. I am a licensed professional engineer, certified commissioning provider. I have let my LC lapse, so I got to get on that. I am a senior MEP and Friends coordinator for DPR Construction, meaning I coordinate activities of mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire, and more subcontractors, as well as commissioning providers, so that my projects start up properly, get turned over with no punch list, ideally. I am also the president this year of the Building Commissioning Association. So it's an organization I love, near and dear. I've been involved with it for over 10 years, and I'm so thrilled to be able to give back in that capacity. And then I chair ANSI IES LP-8. I was the co-leader of LP-16, which is Sequences of Operation for Lighting Control Systems. Rick Miller and I developed the framework for that standard over 10 years, and we had an amazing committee. And then I also sit, and Yolit says, yes, I do make good contributions to the LP6 committee as well, which is lighting controls. So
awesome. I mean,
Yolit's a wonderful leader of that committee.
Oh, for sure. No, Yolit's great. She's also with the Lighting Controls Association, so I work with her a lot too. Maybe we should get her on the show. Anyways, you know, you've got a huge list of really great credentials. You really know what you're doing. You're really involved in the changing information when it comes to lighting controls. And so that's why we just love getting you back on the show to get your input.
Hey man, I gotta stop you right there though. Nobody knows what they're doing.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. We're all kind of out to sea.
We're all making it up as we go along. I like to think that everybody is doing the best they can with what they got. Some days I come with all of my marbles. Other days, all of those marbles are gone and chaos reigns, and we're just doing what we can to pick up the pieces. So
totally. No, I appreciate that. No, for sure. And you know, it's so easy when you're new to this industry to be like, oh, you know, in 5 years, I'm going to have all the answers. And it's like, no, you're going to have some semblance of an idea of what you might be doing by then. But
I believed
yeah,
that once.
right. It's very easy to get suckered that way. But at any rate,
Mhm.
so, speaking of knowing things, you made a comment, a kind of cheeky comment on one of our episodes a while ago where Ron and I were talking about commissioning agents. And you said, is it commissioning agent or commissioning provider? And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to clarify the difference between the two.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for that. So there's three titles that are currently used. There's commissioning agent, there's commissioning authority, and there's commissioning provider. Commissioning agent. Well, there's a lot of legal problems with the word agent because
Mm.
when you're an agent, that means you're an agent to the owner, and you can act independently. Based on the owner input. In addition
Mhm.
to a huge amount of liability insurance, it's not good commissioning practice. And honestly, it's what to me gives commissioning providers a bad name.
Mhm.
And commissioning, if you really go out and act on your own, you're doing nothing but cowboy commissioning. You're changing set points that aren't, on the drawings just because you think it needs to be that way, right? You're changing how
Right.
equipment runs just because you think it's going to run better. That is not the job of a commissioning provider. You are
Mhm.
working to make the building run based on what the drawings say and what the specifications say. If there's deficiencies in the design that prevent that, it's not up to you to fix it. You definitely need to call it out, and there's a process for fixing it. And that way, the liability remains with the engineer of record
Mhm.
or the architect of record, and that's very important. And that's the reason why I said there's a lot more liability insurance that you would need if you
Totally.
just did stuff on your own. Um, the next one is commissioning authority, and there's legal problems associated with that, just because it confuses you with the authority having jurisdiction, which is
Mm.
the inspector, the building inspector, or the fire marshal. Right? You are not you are not authorized to accept installations based on code. That's not your
Mhm.
job. Not what commissioning is about. So the best term is commissioning provider. So
Mhm.
you'll see it abbreviated as CXP. Sometimes I've also heard commissioning professional, which is fine. Um, as far as I know, there's no legal implications with provider or commissioning professional. So you should
Mhm.
be okay with that. So am I gonna correct you? Probably not. Maybe I might give you some side eye just because I know you guys a
Yeah,
little
totally.
a little better.
No, I
But
would
you
hope you
know,
would call me out on that because I'm a stickler for terminology. So,
well,
if I
I'm
use the
really
wrong
glad that
term.
you got a tough ego. Not everybody does. So
No, it's great. I love when people are like, "Hey, you screwed up." Like, and it's like, "Great, now I know." Like, thank you for telling me.
good
So,
for you.
but that's
That's
great.
why I love being and talking with you.
Well,
It's
thank you.
true.
And so, regarding these terms, I mean, really, it is about the legal liability of the term. It really
Yeah,
doesn't,
very
you
important.
could say agent, but you just don't want to
Mhm.
confuse with other agents that are actually more authoritative agents. And then authority is another term. So it's just, you want to make sure you're not pushing somebody else out or taking on somebody else's work that's not yours, which makes sense. And as a
Yeah,
commissioning provider, you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that
that's
everybody's
correct.
role is fulfilled and that the owner has representation.
Hmm. That's right.
And
So I can send you guys a link to a blog post that I wrote
yeah, please.
probably almost 10 years ago now. So
Mm.
that your viewers can read up on all that.
That'd be great. We'll have that link in the description for this episode.
Okay.
But now to get on to something really exciting, your new role with the building group. I'm sorry, for some reason it's spacing on my name.
The Building Commissioning Association?
Building Commissioning Association. For some reason, the last part of that was dropping out of my head. But yes, so you're president of that now.
I am.
That's really exciting.
Are,
Congratulations.
It is exciting.
it's incredibly exciting. I love the organization. It's the only organization that is solely dedicated to commissioning. And we believe in whole building commissioning. So that's other organizations, there are other commissioning organizations or other organizations that have commissioning under their umbrella, but those are really focused on mechanical systems. And if you think about it from an energy standpoint, mechanical systems are really only 40, maybe 50% of a building's energy use.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was grading a test based on completing 50%, that would be an F, right?
Right.
So the building, and it also ignores how mechanical and other systems interact with each other.
Yeah.
That's why whole building commissioning is important. So, it looks at, you want to go with maybe, you're going to do, maybe there was an energy audit, and as part of it, it said, hey, you can replace your fluorescent luminaires or sodium halide with LEDs. Saves you a lot of money, right? Great, but you got to look at it holistically, because now your heating hot water plant is going to operate a lot harder because it's not going to have the heat from your fluorescent lights or ballasts, and the sodium metal halide. My God, that's a lot of heat coming out of those. Not to mention incandescent, right?
Right.
So you have to look at it holistically, and then let's go beyond that, right? We're looking at, hey, you know what? Let's install lighting controls. Well, mechanical on the other side could say, hey, let's integrate those two systems and let's shut off HVAC zones that we're not getting any feedback from the occupancy sensors, right? So the space is unoccupied, right? And then you have mechanical and lighting working together to say, hey, where's the best placement of our occupancy sensors? So we're not tripping the HVAC into staying on all the time because we put the occupancy sensor too close to the HVAC register. Whole building commissioning is incredibly important. I only cited mechanical and electrical or mechanical and lighting examples, but you also have plumbing systems, you have building enclosure, security, fire alarm, smoke control. Those all come into play. So whole building commissioning, to me, that's where it's at.
Okay, so let's take a little bit. We'll take a little bit of a step back, because I'd be willing to bet there's plenty of people watching and listening who have, especially if they've been on the back end and received a quote from a provider, who have seen commissioning services from a provider. So let's talk a little bit about the difference of what sort of a true commissioning provider is versus like a startup technician for the lighting control system or for the HVAC system, because a lot of people use commissioning rather than startup. So I think there's likely a lot of confusion as to, well, I'm already getting commissioning, so why do I need this other commissioning provider to give me this whole thing? I already have this guy. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Oh God, I love that. Thank you. You make me so excited. No, I do. It's just so nice talking with you guys. Okay. So, all right. In the lighting industry, commissioning and startup are used interchangeably. In LP-8, which is the standard for commissioning for lighting and control systems, we use it like the ASHRAE Guideline 0 definition has. And commissioning, in that definition, it's a process. And it starts pre-design, it continues through design and construction, and then post-construction, and then all the way into building operation. So cradle to grave for a building. And it's a process. It's not a single event. So commissioning used as startup. Startup is relatively a single event when you look at building life cycle, right? Yeah, commissioning could take a few weeks, maybe for a big building, but the whole it's just one single process in a whole bunch of stuff that works, a whole bunch of different activities that work together. You might also hear commissioning used in lieu of functional testing, which is what happens after the systems are started up, right? We're gonna test to make sure that system is performing. Do the lights dim properly for daylighting? Do our aux sensors turn off lights properly? Do we have the correct sequence between occupied hours and unoccupied hours, right? During occupied hours, do all the lights come on to 100%? And during unoccupied hours, are they coming on 50% with presence of occupancy? So definitely 3 terms, right? We have the real commissioning term, which is a process. Then we have startup, which is getting those systems from a non-functional state to a functional state. And then we have functional testing, which is making sure those systems are actually performing.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I feel like our industry just struggles with that because, you know, we also sometimes just say commissioning when we mean both startup and functional testing, or one or the other, or all three. And so so we're all, well, maybe not Lyn, but Ron and I are definitely guilty of that. But
it's most of the time it's fine. It all works out. Right?
Sure.
I joke, lower your standards and everything will be fine. But but really, you know, it may open the door to a conversation. And I think where the rubber really hits the road is when it comes to contracts and scope and pricing. Obviously, the costs are going to be different if you're just doing startup and you say, see ya, and you head out,
right? Which is the majority of most proprietary system technicians.
Yes.
It can be. Hopefully you're not on my job. Because I'll hold you down and say, all right, you say it's done. Let's spend 4 hours and we're going to test the system. Right. I want to make sure it's working when you leave, so you're not coming back.
Right.
Right. And that's what should happen.
Yes.
But in a lot of cases, you know, the startup tech gets, you know, brought out 0 hour and is like, we need CO tomorrow. And so they just blitz through it and then leave. And so there's no follow up. And as a result, that's where we get some really bummer projects.
Yeah, and that's why you want somebody like me on the positive side of having someone like me on your job, because I can work with my superintendent to make sure that you actually have time in the schedule to do your startup and do the startup properly. But also, I want to make sure that before you even get here, the power's on. I want to make sure we're not doing fire alarm testing, which... Fire alarm testing, my experience has been that, especially in restrooms with big metal panels, the horn strobe will actually vibrate those panels and it will keep the aux sensors on. Oh. I know, crazy. And well, that's my theory, because I've had aux sensors in bathrooms stay on while we were doing fire alarm testing, and I'm like, what's going on? I'm not sure the speakers emit ultrasonic frequencies that would keep it on, but I don't have one of those special spectral microscope or microphones.
I mean, I guess the other thing could be that they are being sent a signal by the fire alarm to go to emergency state.
Not on that project.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yes, there you go. But again, that goes back to the sequence of operation, right?
Right. Yeah.
You want a good sequence of operation, and you want that detail to be shared not only in the fire alarm sequence of operation, but also in the lighting control sequence of operation. So you know that the scope is being covered from both sides. And
Right.
so someone like me as an MEP coordinator would actually be looking to make sure that the gaps between those silos are bridged.
Sure. And so for the designers who are listening to this episode, do you have any tips for how to do their job better and support commissioning providers?
Oh, okay. I have lots of ideas. One is to ask, is there a third party commissioning provider on this project? And make sure that you understand who they are. Make sure that your drawings are getting reviewed by them. That's really should be the architect's job, but sometimes the architects may not realize, oh, the commissioning provider is also reviewing the lighting control system or the lighting system, right? You can also, for lighting designers, I would also make sure that your lighting control specification, one, covers integration and covers it in a very specific way. And then, so, if you know what your integrated systems are, make sure to list them. Two is reference the commissioning spec. There may be a lighting specific or an electrical specific commissioning spec in Division 26. If that's the case, it's 260800, 260800 is a spec number. But what I'm seeing more and more now is the commissioning providers are actually only writing one commissioning spec. It's in Division 1, 019000 or something close to that. And that actually will cover all the commissioning and all of the covered processes. So it would take that commissioning spec would take the place of not only just the commissioning spec in Division 1, but it would also include the very specific requirements in typically Divisions 22, 23, and 26, maybe Division 25, which is HVAC controls.
Right.
Speaking of which, why isn't there a specific separate division, CSI division, for lighting control systems?
I actually had an interesting conversation with somebody who was digging into this several years ago. And basically the issue is because who's going to do the labor for that division, it might become dropped scope accidentally. So it's better to keep it in Division 26 where the electrical contractor is going to pick it up. For now, for sure. But I mean, we have divisions pop up and we need to address that. And the general contractor's responsibility is to find the appropriate contractor for those divisions.
That's right. That's right. So, controls, HVAC controls used to be under Division 23. But it's been split out into Division 25. And there are specialty HVAC controls contractors that all they do is just HVAC controls. So I feel like until we have specialized lighting control subcontractors, which we're starting to see, or we have superhumans like you two, that go beyond just lighting controls and go over to the integration side, I just don't think we're quite there yet. I do feel like it's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing.
It is, and I think it's kind of across the board. It's not just the labor for installation and programming, but it's also the labor for design and coordination. We're just now seeing lighting design firms starting to create lighting controls designer positions. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves over the next few years. But, it's through and through. Lighting controls for a long time have kind of been the last second thought. And now it's kind of like, nope, this needs to be more forethought than last second.
Yep. And so for me as a MEP coordinator, I'm also, on the forefront of when I receive a project and I see that there's no sequence of operation. I'm like raising my hands to say, hey, where is it? And, pointing them to LP-16. We have standard now. I'm super excited about that. And actually that saved our bacon for one of my bigger projects in the last 2 years. Is I asked that same question. I heard that there was a lighting designer. I sent him the outline of the standard and told him where to go. It actually wasn't available quite yet. It was in public comment at the time. So and then once he got that, once it came out, he bought it, but he's also made it for the standard for their whole lighting department. Nice. I think I told you about how I cried when I saw that that sequence, not just on my project, but it was on another completely different project with a completely different MEP coordinator. And he saw this and he said, "This is going to make my life so much easier." And I cried again. I mean, I cried because I saw it in the wild, but I cried because I saw that he saw the value and it was going to make his job better and the project better. Oh, so good. Such a great story.
For sure.
So as we start looking, at projects obviously getting bigger and more complex, and whether you're an owner or an architect, and you start thinking about the fact that you no longer need just individual entities to start up you want an MEP coordinator, or you want a commissioning, someone to oversee the commissioning to make sure that all the systems are talking the way they're supposed to. How do they make sure that that person is on their project? They've got the right firm or the right person like you on their project.
Mm-hmm. So architects can actually require that, require the general contractor to have an MEP coordinator in the general conditions. So architects and owners, the architects are going to put it in the Division 1 specs, but owners also need to make sure that it's in there. So they voice that requirement in the OPR so that architects can include that in the spec. And then they also, of course,
hold on a second. Do you mind just clarifying what an OPR is?
I was 50-50 if you were going to ask her.
Good job. So go back to LP-8. It's the owner's project requirements. All lighting designers, another tip for them, ask where your OPR is. Ask your architect, do we have an OPR? Because that's going to give you your marching orders for your lighting control systems. And the update to LP-8 will give lighting designers very good questions to ask of the owner if they don't have an OPR. But it also goes over what should be in an OPR. The current version goes into what should be included in an OPR just for lighting and lighting control systems. Oh, so that's what I loved about that standard. No, I'm not kidding. LP-8 gives you great bones for OPR content and basis of design content. Honestly, there's more topics in there than you could ever have budget to include, but it's nice to have a list that you can winnow down from.
Well, it's even if you're not part of the OPR construction, these are still excellent questions to ask at any point along the project. If you get incorporated. Right. If you're a last second integrator, go to that list and go down the list and see if you can answer those questions.
That's right. Oh, I love that tip. Can I use that?
Yeah, please.
Great.
But yeah, so back to what you were...
Ian, refresh me on the question again. Sorry, I watched my tab contractor. He's walking off site.
You're totally good.
I'm trying not to let the top of my head blow off. So
I think, in general, I think as individual, right. So as individual trades, I think we've all seen sort of a need of projects needing someone to oversee, an MEP coordinator to oversee these projects. And I think a lot of times the architect may have a good idea if they need it or not, but the owners likely don't have the understanding, unless they've been on a lot of larger projects, that they need this. So, how does the owner make sure that there's an MEP coordinator engaged on their project?
It's ask. If it doesn't get in the Division 1 specs, owners are generally interviewing the general contractor. And you should ask. You should make it a part of your evaluation criteria. At the same time, though, unless it's contractually required, you can say anything you want in the interview to get the job, and maybe you put a project engineer as your MEP coordinator. So a project engineer is someone maybe straight out of school, maybe 5 years of experience. They may not even understand MEP systems, but they got that title. And they're doing a whole bunch of other stuff. So having it in the contractual requirements really puts teeth into it. So that's a best practice for owners. Get it in the specs, make sure it's in. And you know what? A lot of owners have standard Division 1 specifications, and they will cover, the qualifications for the general contractor and their staff. Oftentimes you'll see requirements for, safety staff and how much they have to be on site. Well, why not include it for an MEP coordinator?
Yeah.
All right, I have a
As far
follow-up.
as okay, go ahead.
If do you see any difference in projects that use GC, a general contractor, versus a my mind just went blank. A CM, a
Multi-prime?
construction manager.
Oh, construction manager. Well, there are so you can do a multi-prime, with a construction manager managing
And
all
sorry,
those.
hang on. What does multi-prime mean?
Multi-prime means the owner has contracts with every single contractor, rather than, in what I would call a regular project, the general contractor holds the contract, and then they contract with different subcontractors, different trades, to do, other parts of the work. So the construction manager would be the one managing all of those different subcontractors. If the construction manager is not aware of the integrated nature of the building, or how to get those subcontractors working together, or holding them to working together, that can be difficult. So, yeah. I mean, granted, I'm on the GC side, so I'm going to say, owners should have just one GC and hold them responsible and lead them to holding their subs responsible. But, we kind of all survive and thrive together, or we don't. So
Right.
Definitely, I mean, you got to be careful with who you choose, And I think your relationship with the general contractor or your construction manager is really important. And so are their qualifications and how they go about doing business.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I've been on so many projects where the GC completely bungled a lot of the steps that needed to happen with lighting and lighting control specifically. There was one project where the GC bought all the equipment without going through a submittal process, and then handed it all to the electrical contractor. And the electrical contractor was like, "What do you want me to do? Like, we didn't go through a submittal process for this."
That actually happened on one of my projects. And it was very expensive for the owner because we had to do demand response, and they bought a non-networked system.
Oh, no.
And so they had to replace, it was a mesh network. So you had to replace every single occupancy sensor with one that could communicate outside of the luminaire.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I saw it early on. I talked to the owner about it. It was clear he did not really want to talk about it. So I talked with our project executive, and I said, this is probably going to be a problem. I'll let you handle talking to him. And my project executive had other fish that he needed to fry, and it made it all the way to the very end. And it was a scramble. It was really tough.
Yeah.
So, going back to the Building Commissioning Association, there's a lot of attention from lighting controls now to trying to reach across to other trades because of the requirements that are coming out through energy codes, or just general recommendation. Like you said, if you coordinate your motion sensors correctly, then you don't have to have 20 different sensors on the ceiling. for different systems. So, what is the Building Commissioning Association doing in response to all of that? Because I imagine there is clear pickup of attention being put on this.
Mm-hmm. There is. So, my support for LP-8, some of it, we do have Building Commissioning Association members that are on that IES committee, which I'm super thankful for. We also, when we presented on the revision for the standard at one of the annual conferences, there was a huge amount of interest, and so we will be having those interested subject matter experts be part of our public review process. So, and then they have an internal champion with me,
right?
but I'm just one person. The more I've done a lot, and we have a lot, I've brought in other IES members to present at our conferences, which the call for abstracts just opened. So if any IES members want to speak in Pittsburgh this year at our annual conference, I used to be conference chair, by the way, they're totally welcome. I would love to see them submit an application. I'm sure you're going to publish my link. Email, right? Yeah. Have them talk to me, or go to the BCA website that you can download the call for abstracts there. But I will say the lighting and lighting controls sessions at the BCA conference, because they're such a hot topic because of all the new relatively new regulatory compliance that's out there. It's a big hot topic. So those presentations are very well attended. And I was surprised. I will say over the last 10 years, my first presentation at the BCA was on DG29 with James Donson. Have you interviewed James yet?
No, we haven't. We should have him on for sure.
You got to interview James.
Yeah.
James
absolutely.
Is a hoot. James is the person that I learned the importance of making people laugh in my presentations.
Okay.
Interesting.
Do you remember the LP16 Easy as Cake presentation that I did with Shoshana? Yeah. Just totally unhinged, cake made of cupcakes,
right.
All cake analogies all the time. Well, for me, that I learned the value in that from James. And James is also a mechanical engineer that loves lighting. And James actually inspired me to find a place in lighting controls and develop my expertise in lighting control systems.
Wow.
So James is a mechanical engineer that became an expert in lighting and lighting audits, and later lighting commissioning. I brought commissioning expertise and a huge amount of HVAC controls expertise. So I took the lighting controls side, and then together we were absolute wonder twins for lighting commissioning.
Which is, before recent times, it does seem like there was a trend where there was minimal attention paid to lighting controls until there was this pickup. And I would definitely contribute both of your efforts to that. It's thanks to your efforts that we're actually seeing this increase in attention and awareness. So,
thank you.
Sure.
Lighting controls are great.
Yes, and absolutely.
They're not boogeymen. And you know what? Although sometimes I do see it, because I have had lighting designers tell me, no, we would rather have the controls laid out in the submittal process.
Yep.
And what I told him is, why are you ceding your power? Because once you lay out the controls in the submittal, everybody else has taken all of the ceiling real estate that you really need. The lighting is laid out. The HVAC supply and return is laid out. The fire alarm is laid out. The sprinklers are laid out. Any other ceiling devices are laid out. So ceiling fans, right? So you're giving up your power and making your design and that you are going to be evaluated on. You're giving up success if you do it late and you allow someone to do it in submittal process.
Right. No, and I think
It
that's a
also
really good point.
reduces, it reduces
Go ahead.
coordination as well, right?
Yeah.
Like not waiting till submittals.
1000%.
There's zero, right? There's no coordination with HVAC. There's no coordination with any
1000%.
other trades. Yeah.
Well, we're
Let me tell
almost
you a
out of
story.
time here. Oh, no, please tell the
Okay.
story and then I will do the wrap up.
All right. So my current project that I'm on the last phase of, we've had 3 phases. The first phase, I was not involved in design review or submittal review. I was just called out at the end, help get this building started up and done. Well, what I noticed in my first walk was all the occupancy sensors are within 3 feet of the HVAC diffuser, or they're in front of the door. We had probably 2 weeks of rework between trying to adjust sensitivity and ultimately masking the infrared sensor, just to get them to function properly. Phase 2, it was coordinated in submittal, still a little too late. Phase 3, we started coordination before the submittal, and we've had no problem. The only problems we've had were programming. We have had to make very few sensitivity adjustments, no masking. And we have demand control ventilation on this project, so even more so. So, we took over 2 weeks of rework out by doing that coordination early, and it works better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Side by side.
I mean, it's basically your time up front pays in dividends later on, versus if you're doing
1000%.
after the fact work, you have to now review everybody else's stuff and make sure that you're not conflicting with it. So yeah,
And you're just not able to make the same quality improvements for the time spent.
Right. So I mean, we're almost out of time now, but basically, I want to encapsulate this, because I mean it's such a nice little message here for our listeners to really think about, which is, it's the skill to be able to track a project through and coordinate it through and through is something that other people can do and be a part of that process. But a commissioning provider really is going to help ensure that, okay, as a lighting controls designer, I only have so much control over one aspect of a project, whereas a commissioning provider has that capability to really oversee everything and say, oh, hold on, there's a problem over here. Let's talk about this. And it's not to say you did a bad job. It's just to double check everybody's work. I mean, if you're writing a novel, you're going to have a proofreader, and that's pretty much what a commissioning provider is going to be doing. They're going to be proofreading your design work. And at the same time, if you don't have the commissioning provider involved, it's certainly worth asking, hey, do you have like a Division 1 spec that lists out requirements? Or, are you aware that you might want to do that? And that can really happen along the way. I mean, a lot of lighting controls specialists get pulled in later on in the project, and it's like, okay, maybe this project is unfortunate and there's going to be a lot of issues, but future projects, maybe think about doing this a little bit differently. And so hopefully we can see like that shift, because it's definitely an ad service. I mean, we didn't talk about cost this time, but we did talk about cost last time. And it really it pays back to have a commissioning provider involved in a project. And additionally, just thinking through all the design aspects. A lot of lighting designers push back, like you said, on the designing the details of a lighting control system and just leaning very hard on, a complete sequence of operations, and that's it. And it's like, yeah, but you're missing out on a really important factor, which is the coordination of your devices. And so, and the ceiling keeps getting busier and busier. I don't know what specifically, but every single trade has more and more ceiling devices that are happening. And lighting is also taking up a huge amount of real estate too. And so it's something you really need to think about. up front, or maybe go triple LC, although I'm not saying that that's like the perfect solution for everything, but at the very least, you have devices with your fixtures, so pro con, but at the same time, it's not an
Pro-con.
excuse to be lazy. You still need to coordinate stuff. It's just that
Mhm.
you have a little bit more flexibility now. So a good lighting controls designer is going to think about this up front and go, okay,
Yeah.
this might be a triple LC project, but I can't just go every device, every fixture gets a motion sensor and that's it. And I'm good. I walk away. It's like,
Right.
like you
Mhm.
said, with going through the testing, okay, all of those fixtures now have motion sensors that need to be tested and verified that they're meeting the requirements of the space and that they're programmed correctly. So that's a lot of work if that's going to be expected of every single light fixture having a device.
Yeah.
I
I
have
completely agree.
I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to like just kill people when doing motion sensor testing. Yeah, so many times I would tell the GC, regardless of what time he left the project, I'm not coming until everyone else leaves. I'm going to do this tonight, overnight, in an empty building because I'm not dealing with someone opening a door and walking in a room while I'm trying to do testing because it is miserable. And sometimes you just have to work after hours to do testing with sensors. There's just no way around it
Mhm.
sometimes. It can be
Mhm.
complicated. I think the biggest takeaway for our listeners is if you work with a good MEP coordinator, someone like Lyn, you truly can have your cake and eat it too on your project because you can make sure that things aren't going to go wrong and that everything's going to be coordinated and all those layers of icing and everything else that's in there, all that buttercream, it's all going to be perfect. It's all going to be perfect. Lyn, thank you so much for your expertise and your time. Absolutely fantastic conversation. I will close us out and remind our listeners that today's episode is presented by the LCA, the Lighting Controls Association, and Light Fair. We will see you guys there soon.
And it's also financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. Got a lot of information, but also some information about the Lighting Specialist in Controls certification coming out from NAILD. It's going to happen this June. So if you want to get on board, now's the time to register, or at least pre-register. And also, huge shout out to our sponsor. We could not do this without your support. MaxLight, their CMAX platform is worth checking out. It's really great, versatile solution. It targets the triple LC market, but it's not just triple LC. They have networked lighting control solutions as well for interior and exterior. So definitely check them out. maxlight.com/CMAX. Thank you so much for joining us. And Lyn, thank you. This was a great conversation.